Anton, and I'm currently working at Opyn. And today I'm gonna share, this is a very ambitious type topic, but I'll try my best. Basically, I just want to share some of our choices that we made at Opyn when we were building our V2 of the protocol. And hopefully you guys can learn something either from it or give me some feedback so we can build better V3 or whatever that's coming. So a little bit about myself. I'm obviously at Opyn right now. And before Opyn, I worked at a hardware company called Opyn at Taipei. So yeah, that's all my experience. So anyone here heard of Opyn before? Okay. So we're a option protocol, and do people know what option means? Okay, pretty good. So we can faster the process. So option is actually a very not trivial, but yeah, I think it's a very easy financial contract, and it's also very, very easy to build on Ethereum if you just think of the base cases. The definition of option is the right but not obligation to do a certain trade at a predefined price, which we call strike price, before expiry. And there are two kinds of options, which is call option and put option. Call option gives you the right to buy something, put option gives you the right to sell something. So those are pretty trivial. And the most basic use case is that as an option seller, you're pretty much just putting down some collateral and then try to collect this premium. Because a very interesting property about option is that it's always worth something. This is pretty different from other derivative contracts because option is a right and it's not an obligation to do anything. So if you hold this option, then basically means you can whether do things or only do things when it's beneficial to you. So this is always an option always worth something. This is, I think, pretty interesting. So as an option buyer, you can use options to hedge your portfolio or just to I don't know, make up some portfolio you want to make. So, and also it's a very good tool to speculate the price if you think ETH price or Bitcoin price is going dramatically, or you want to bet on volatility. Option is a very easy, not easy, very trivial instrument to consider. So at this point, if this is all you know about options, it's actually pretty trivial for you to build an option protocol on chain. Because this is probably one of the easiest contracts you can build. Basically, what you have to do is only two functions. The first one is, as a seller, if you want to mint this option token and then sell it, I don't know, I don't care where, but to mint this option, you just need to put down collateral. And the collateral is actually just the amount of the underlying assets that you're willing to sell, right? And then after you mint this token, this is kind of the right. You can sell this right to anyone else, and then say, hey, before this expiry, you can just come to this contract, and then I'll sell you my collateral with this price. So this is easy. And as a buyer, if you buy an option token, you just decide whether I want to exercise before expiry, right? So if I want to exercise, I just kind of sell this or just make this trade. I sell the underlying token back to the contract with this O token, and then I can get the collateral. So it's just a kind of a predefined trade, or also kind of an order that you can't really reverse or cancel before expiry. So this is RV1, and also lots of different protocols are trying to build this option, exchanger systems, whatever, on Ethereum. This is basically, we were basically doing the same thing, which is all the logics are probably the same. But the biggest problem we see in our V1, this is how we built our V1. And the biggest problem we see is capital inefficiency. Because consider this case, like if ETH is at 2,000 right now, selling a 1,000 put is actually not gonna give you a lot of premium because it's very, like let's say it expires in a month. So it's very unlikely that ETH will crash 50% in a month. So you can't really, well, maybe will, but I don't know. Like personally, I won't want to pay too much for it, right? If it's selling at $100, you won't buy it. It's probably like 0.1 as a fair premium. So as a seller, you're putting down 1,000 USD, but you're only generating 10 cents of income stream. So this is extremely capital inefficient. So that is something we want to solve because we believe that solving this question can bring more market makers on board and then just bring more liquidities into whatever exchange we're using. So keep that in mind. That's why we were trying to build a V2. Okay, so what we really solve in V2 right now, like it's just, we add one more feature, which is called spread. A spread is basically telling you like, okay, so it's still fully collateralized, but somehow you can reduce your capital by buying another option from one other person, right? So let's say originally you have to put down 2,000 USDC to mint a 2,000 USDC put. Right now you can buy 1,000 put from other people. It will only cost you like 10 cents, and then you can just put down 1,000 USD. So this is like creating a separate, kind of like separating the market for someone who really wants extremely safe and low risk investment strategy. They can kind of like mint this very low risk options and then sell it to other people. And some market maker can use this kind of strategy to reduce the amount of capital they have to put down in the system. And there are also something like like the third one here is like you can buy a higher strike price put option and then sell another lower strike price one. So this is like you sacrifice some of your payout because if each price dropped to $0, you only get 200 because you're both a holder and at this point you're like both a holder and a seller, and you're sacrificing some payout, but you don't have to pay that much premium. So this is like a very traditional way in traditional finance that people use spread to like create what they call credit spread or debit spread to like reduce collateral or just like reduce the premium they have to pay. So yeah, and we're also working on the second one, which is allowing partial collateralization. Means just like if we recall this scenario, just like maybe we can add a liquidation mechanism that somehow tells that the option is not worth that much money. So you can take out like 900 of your USDC. So this is something we're working on.
Any questions so far?
Yeah, any questions so far?
Version 2? Yeah.
What's the counterparty behind underwriting these options? Is it like an AMM or is it like specific people taking the other side of the exchange on bots or something?
Yeah, like the counterparty is really just like seller and buyers. So if you're buying an option, you have to find someone who's willing to write you this contract. So we don't have any AMM right now. So we're using order book system, which is like a very trivial order book buyer and seller like matching, kind of like a matching engine. So does that answer your question? Like we don't have an AMM.
Yeah.
Where are you running the order book right now?
Oh, 0x.
And that's decentralized, right?
Yeah. So our V2 protocol is called Gamma. We want to have a very cool name, but we kind of failed at the marketing because people got confused about Gamma versus Opyn. So we just call it Open V2 anyway. But if you if you went to if you go to our GitHub, you can find all the code under Gamma protocol, which I think is cooler.
So you just call it Open V2.
Yeah, because there's less confusion. All right. And okay, so one thing that I can mention first is like with our V1 protocol, it's called it is so-called physical settlement, physical settle options, which means when you're exercising an option, you don't need any oracle, right? Because just send this option token and the underlying assets back to our contract, and we'll just send you collateral assets. So that's fair, and it's easy, and you don't really need any trust. So that's great. That's working pretty well. But the one problem there is it's harder to implement spread, because you can imagine, like, if I'm exercising one option against a seller, but that seller actually don't have all the collateral, but that seller have some collateral plus another token, that is somehow kind of like a chain exercise have to happen on chain. At least that's like when we were originally thinking about this problem, we thought this is probably gonna be problematic. And the second, and another thing about introducing an oracle is that lots of users were complaining about our V1 and said like, oh, we can't get the transaction to get confirmed before your expiry date. Maybe because the network congestion or just like some front end bugs, because there was one time that very close to expiry, and then like within half an hour, like maybe 2 users visit our website and our website just crashed. And you know, like those kind of centralization risk is also like a risk, even if it's not on the smart contract level. There are so many factors that can prevent people from successfully claim their proceeds. So we like lots of users got angry. So we were like, okay, maybe using the oracle is actually easier because you don't have to handle that much user issues. You just have to figure out a way to like report the price fairly and transparently. So that's like the two things we consider to decide to introduce an oracle. Because after we have an oracle, we can just say, okay, this is the price at expiry, and then we can let people actually exercise after expiry. You don't have to rush during that busy hour or gas. Like if the gas is higher, you can wait for whatever you want, and then you can just exercise later. So this is one thing. And yeah, one other thing, like I kind of already mentioned, is like the exercise constraint. It's actually, as we were integrating with more projects, we realized that it's actually a hard assumption to make, because imagine like anyone else who wrap our O token into their own product, they have to make sure they can exercise before this expiry time. So this risk kind of inherent, like and also like kind of prevent our token to be used by lots of different projects, because they don't want to have this time constraints. And somehow like with cash settlement, it's easier in a sense because we just have this very complicated formula on chain. Actually, it's not that complicated, but we just have this formula on chain, and then we say, okay, after expiry, after we got the price from the oracle, this is the amount of money you can take out, and you can just chill and wait for a month and hold your tokens. And after like the gas price is like lower, you can claim your profit or whatever. And this is actually a very good property that we want to have, because we think this will lower the boundary of integrations and innovation. So even though that means we will be having an oracle, we think like this is the right direction to go.
Yeah, and so I actually have a question regarding Oracle. So I was, in my mind, like the general idea or like the edge cases that we're looking for actually is like when the Oracle is not updating properly for some time, then what would happen? So what I'm thinking is, for example, in the case of Fumo 3D, actually the attacker, when there is like high enough payout, there's actually incentive for an attacker to flood the network, right? And so that it's kind of filled there, and then since the Oracle or anything else cannot update it properly, then he can execute those kind of stuff, right? And so of course, it may not happen in the regular case, but then when some rewards or maybe some options is big enough, maybe that creates some incentive. So I'm wondering how you're using the Oracle and whether this is a concern or something like that.
Yeah. Let me jump to the next. There's not lots of information here, but just here if you want to read it. Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, right now we are worried about this situation. So one thing we do is we define the expiry price to be the first price that's submitted after the after the expiry. So, well, it's kind of unfair in another way, but at least we can prevent people from stopping our Oracle to submit any price, because in that case we'll just wait until the Oracle actually had the price. So that is one of the way to prevent people who's preventing Oracle from submitting anything. And the other way, the other thing is we're working with Chainlink, and specifically because with their Oracle, they kind of have this mechanism to submit a historical price. So what they're not doing is that we don't need a live price at the moment. We only need the exact price at the timestamp when option expires. So that will reduce a lot of risk, I guess. So let me go back a little bit. This is there are two kind of options, which is people call American option and European options. And European option basically means you can only settle on the expiry date. And we could decide to go this route because European option means that we only have to submit the very precise price at expiry. We don't have to care about if Chainlink is working 23 hours a day. We just have to care about that particular hours that they have to submit the price. And also with Chainlink, yeah, they have this historical mechanism. They can write historical price back. So if someone attacked the Oracle, they cannot submit the price for an hour. We would just wait for an hour, and then until someone submit the price, they will submit the price that's an hour earlier. So they will say, okay, an hour earlier, this is the ETH price, this is the Bitcoin price, and we will use that price as settlement price. This is still a concern because basically means that Chainlink has a great power controlling our system. So we very easily have another dispute system, which is super centralized right now because we're using a multisig to actually have the right to override any price that people submit, that Chainlink submit. But yeah, maybe in the future we'll have tokens, we'll have decentralized government, and we can extend this dispute period to be longer. So maybe have a 3-day dispute period so people can come and discuss, see if the price is fair, and then decide if we want to dispute it or not.
Follow-up question. And so when you're saying that you can dispute or Chainlink can go back to history and change the price, I was wondering because previously you also mentioned that the cash, sorry, I forgot the name, but it was instantaneous, right? The payouts. And I was wondering if it's instantaneous, then it can already take. Well,
so actually, no, it's not instantaneous. There will be a locking, or we have to wait until this whole price settlement thing is finalized to actually let people take out the receipt. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Oh.
So maybe we can pause here and take more questions for Anton. 因为有啊，有问题吗？还有其他人有问题吗？
So
别人想要的结尾吗？
yeah, like I have a little like final comments on the previous section is pretty much just like I think Oracle is not necessarily bad, and especially in our cases, we want to be very precise about the settlement price. And actually, we're convinced that in our cases, having Oracle actually can make our system fair because you don't have to care about exercising the last minute and then complain about gas price. So yeah, I think this opinion may be very different from lots of other protocols because people are afraid of oracles because yeah, centralization risk and all that kind of stuff. But our take is that lots of our users complains about not being able to exercise or not being able to like take out their collateral properly instead of like centralization risk. Nobody ever like complains about that. So maybe if you're deciding in protocol, that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, so I guess I'm confused about when you're doing the European style.
Yeah.
It's still like the user not need to do anything before that separation. They can wait until after you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, but the provider of the person who wrote the option, like they want to get their money, their collateral back, right? So
Yeah.
is it like a race then? Like who?
No, so like this is that question is not related to like either American or European. It's like cash settle or physical settle. So basically, what we did is like with cash settlement, we just at a certain time stamp. Well, okay, it's like kind of related, but like at expiry, we'll define a price, and with that price, define both the writer, the seller, and the buyer will have a amount that they can take out, right? So as a seller, after that price is submitted, you can your collateral left is kind of decided, and you can also come here anytime later and then to claim your collateral.
So you basically take the difference between the price that's
Yeah, and the expiry price.
还有其他有问题吗 ？Kimi 老师，Danger any
Just a follow-up question to the order booking versus AMM. Like, what's your long-term view? Do you think that the order booking is sustainable? Like, because right now, like, gas are really expensive. But on L2, do you think it will be cheap enough? Or, like, what's the efficiency of that versus, like, the AMM model?
That's a really good question we ask ourselves every day. And I mean, like, we're currently exploring all the L2 solutions, and we're trying to move there ASAP. But the problem right now, like I mentioned, is that we're using an external order book. So we're kind of depending on 0x right now. So we'll be waiting for them to choose a L2 solution so we can move there with them, or we have to find some other partners because our protocol actually just handle minting an option, but never handles like selling or anything else. And about the AMM question, I don't think like that is gonna replace order book because order book is a very traditional and more efficient and safer trading venue for lots of sophisticated traders. So like big institutions, they're probably not gonna use it, or like AMM, they're probably gonna stick with order book. But it's also very clear that order book is now working on layer 1. So yeah, we're kind of both doing the same thing, right? Doing both things right now versus like trying to design an AMM that's not too obvious for sellers to lose or market makers to lose money. And the second one just like move to L2 with the order book. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Well, do you have any like metrics or like number? I think that's a question that I've had in general. I haven't really looked into it. Is the efficiency of like the markets on AMM versus order? I guess it's more generalizable, but I don't know if you have.
The problem we see right now with AMM is that we did use Uniswap for our V1 options, but we can't really tell if the volume is actually higher because there are lots of arbitrage opportunity. So you can't really tell if that's really users using your or buying your options or just like bots, like trading, like arbitraging between like centralized exchanges and your protocols. So I guess like one of the fundamental question is we don't know anything about option AMM because none of us or none of the existing teams have ever designed a profitable AMM for the market makers. So all the AMMs right now are losing money, so we can't really use that as a metric to compare to order book.
So I'm not super familiar with how Syrinx works, but like how much of the order book is on-chain versus off-chain? And is that something where there's room to improve? So like more things are done off-chain.
You mean?
Of Syrinx, of the order book, in terms of like, because you mentioned like data stuff, but how much of that actually has to be on-chain?
You mean how much of that would be?
Has to be on-chain as opposed to being off-chain.
Oh, I mean, like at least the settlement part have to be on chain,
Yeah.
and also the cancellation have to be on chain if you don't want to trust anyone. So that's like already a pretty big, not. It's better than.
That's different from the order book now. The settlement and the order book.
That's how 0x currently work on their one, but that's still too expensive for average user. So.
I guess what's
Oh yeah. I just wanted to point out that there are some layer ones that have full order books on chain. So.
I know. Yeah, I know.
You want to tell us more about it? So thanks very much, Anton, for your time, because we have more speakers.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll save it to the next event when you sign up as another speaker. Yeah, so